All right, so the last thing we read yesterday, they had gone to a convention center, and Doc insisted that Jim have his own stage and his own show. And so now we're going to find out what happens with Jim as his life keeps going. During one special show, Doc greeted the packed crowd, then turned to Jim. "Jim, can you show me where President McKinley sits today?" Doc asked. Jim strutted to the center stage, faced the President of the United States, and bowed. Then Jim walked over to the card rack, scanned the name cards, and picked out the one marked McKinley. A gasp echoed through the room. Audience members began shouting out requests for Jim. "Spell this word, divide these numbers, get that card, follow that letter, ring up this cell," and Jim did it all without a mistake. He even wrote his name on the blackboard, Jim Key. People couldn't believe their eyes. How could a horse learn to do such things? The whip makes horses stubborn, and they obey through fear, Doc explained. Kindness, kindness, and more kindness. That's the way. Does this surprise you, all the things that a horse can do? Or do you think it was a trick? What do you think? After the Tennessee Sentinel Exposition, Doc and Jim went on the road again. This time they had a big-time promoter, Albert Rogers, to arrange performances for them. News of Jim's remarkable skills spread across the country. Admiring reporters began calling the horse Beautiful Jim Key, and the name stuck. Doc and Beautiful Jim Key performed around the country, but the further south they traveled, the more racial discrimination Doc faced. Often he wasn't allowed to eat in the same restaurants, sleep in the same hotels, or ride in the same railroad cars as the white people. Sometimes Doc and Jim weren't allowed to perform because people didn't believe Doc's claims of his horse skills. When Doc offered to perform for schools in Cincinnati, Ohio, a school board member replied, "We can't close our school for horse shows." And people who didn't know about Doc's gentle training methods worried that Jim might be an abused horse performing out of fear. So people weren't trusting him in what he was doing. After a while, Doc and Jim caught the attention of humane societies, groups of people who were committed to ending cruelty towards animals. Like Doc, members of the humane societies believed that animals were intelligent, capable of emotions, and willing to learn if treated well. They deserved protection. Beautiful Jim Key was the perfect animal to represent their cause. A portion of the ticket sales for Jim's performances were donated to the humane societies. The money was used to buy horses, ambulances. The money was used to buy horse ambulances and rescue cranes, fund educational programs, and buy books about animals for libraries. With their growing fame, Doc and Jim were helping to promote the cause of kindness towards animals. They donated the money to the Humane Society. Why did he think this was important? Why did he think, that money needs to go to the Humane Society and help other animals? Think about that. Albert Rogers worked hard to get Doc and Jim onto prestigious stages. In New York, they performed in their own Broadway play, The Scholar and a Model Office Boy. Jim played the parts of a student and a clerk. He answered the phone, rang school bells, identified colors, made change from a cash register, filed letters, and more. At a performance in St. Louis, Jim showed off his math skills. A man called out, "Jim, if you take 7, multiply it by 3, add 9, divide it by 3, subtract 7, what should the answer be?" Jim paused for a moment, then picked up the card marked with a 3. The man jumped to his feet. "You're wrong, Jim," he shouted. "The answer is 7. Jim shook his head. No. The audience hurried to do the math. It turned out that Jim was correct. The answer was 3. People asked Doc if any horse could learn these skills Jim had mastered. He said yes, providing that he has not been abused. In 1898, school districts around the country had decided that Doc Key and Beautiful Jim Key were perfect examples of education and kindness. They canceled school days so students could see Jim perform. Children lined up to compete in spelling bees against the most highly educated horse in the world. In St. Louis, Missouri, Jim won by spelling the word revelation. In Minneapolis, Minnesota, he won with the name Isaiah. In Baltimore, Maryland, he won by spelling the word physics. Other cities came up with different words to test Jim, but most times he won. Around the United States, about 2 million children stepped right up to sign the official Jim Key Pledge. I promise to always be kind to animals. Doc Key and beautiful Jim Key were now famous. Record-breaking crowds packed coliseums, theaters, and music halls across the nation to see them. In every city and town, thousands of people bought tickets to attend Doc and Jim's performances. Sometimes police officers had to step in to control the mobs of enthusiastic fans who gathered. Doc and Jim were invited to perform on stages where only white entertainers had been welcome before. Doc would not accept the segregated seating that forced African Americans into the worst seats. He insisted on special performances with equal seating for all. The property owners agreed. They couldn't argue with the most popular attraction in the country. What do you think the word segregated means from the context clues? Doc would not accept the segregated seating that forced the African Americans to sit in the worst seats. So we know a lot about segregation, and so the Afro-Americans were forced to sit somewhere else. Lets me know what that word might mean. In spite of Jim's many skills, skeptics tried to prove that Doc and Jim's act was a hoax. They scrambled the letters, mixed up the numbers, scattered the colors and flags, and nothing seemed to fool Jim. In 1901, an investigation was conducted by professors from Harvard University. They studied Doc and Jim's performances, looking for signs of trickery. They asked Doc many questions. Some say it's hypnotism and that kind of thing, but I don't know anything about that, Doc said. But I do know Jim knows and what I asked him to do. Okay, so I don't quite remember where we finished when I paused the video a while ago, so I'm just going to pick up at the bottom of this page and then we'll finish the book. Some say it's hypnotism and that kind of thing, but I don't know about anything about that, Doc said. But I do know Jim knows and does what I ask him to do. The next day, the Boston Daily Globe newspaper printed an article with the results of the Harvard study. The professors came to the conclusion that there were no tricks or hoax. It is simply education, they said. By 1906, 73-year-old Doc and 17-year-old Jim were worn out. For 19 years, they had traveled the country. Now it was time to go home to the rolling hills of Shelbyville, where they could continue to learn and play together. They had proven to millions of people what Doc Key had always believed. With kindness, anything is possible. It is hoped that those who have met Jim Key will have carried away with them a kinder regard toward animals and will go forward resolved to whatever may be in their power for the care of our friends. It says, what does it mean when they say, with kindness, anything is possible? What do we think that means? Yeah, like if you are kind to people, they're going to do whatever, or animals in that matter, they're going to do whatever you want them to do. They're going to do work for you because they want to do good. And I think that is kind of the message of this book, is treat others with kindness. It says here, animals learn and respond better to kindness than cruelty. And there's plenty of text evidence in this story for us to know this. What do you think the author's purpose in writing this book is? Why do you think he wanted to write this book? What do you think his purpose was? I think he probably wrote this book to inform us about a man and his horse and how kindness can go a long way. I don't think he wrote it to really entertain us, because he was giving us information about something. It was a little entertaining for sure, but I definitely don't think he was trying to persuade us about anything, and he wasn't explaining something to us, but more of informing us, and it was entertaining also.